Cool. I think we're live.
Awesome.
Professor Dan Wallen. It's nice to see you, Dan.
Pleasure is mine, buddy. Pleasure is mine. I'm glad to see you're, as I said, glad to see you're doing well and thriving in the jiu-jitsu world. It's been a long time since we first started training together many years ago.
Well, I had a good teacher.
Well, as I said, sometimes it's not about being an amazing teacher. It's just about kind of getting people started, and then they run with the ball. You show them what the ball is, and then they take the ball and run.
Well, I had a good example, let me tell you, by you being the leader of Fightworks when I started Jiu-Jitsu. And believe me, it was a great place for me, a great group of people, great instructors, and of course, under your leadership, I think that had a lot to do too. For those of you guys who just, I'm just checking, we're live on Facebook. We are talking with Professor Dan Wallen. He is a Grandmaster Relson Gracie black belt, and he was my teacher when I started Jiu-Jitsu journey. Especially Dan, I don't know if you know this, but I started in Peru. I did in Peru for a few months. Jiu-Jitsu, I came to America, and then I find Fightworks, right? I found it on a yellow page where it was the picture of Relson. I was like, there's a Gracie teaching? So I went at the Fightworks where it was it was a Gold's Gym or Ward's Gym? I don't remember. There was a gym.
Yeah, it wasn't a Gold's Gym. I think World Gym is right.
World Gym.
And eventually we lost that location because I think a furniture company came in and kind of bought like the whole complex, and so we got booted out. But
yes, I remember
those were great days.
Yeah, I remember going to the gym. We had to put the mats down because we had a little space in the gym.
Right.
And then we would roll, do some classes, and then we had to put the mats back. Right. I remember you being a purple belt. No, you still were a blue belt at that time, if I remember correctly. So that's where I found Fightworks, but I don't really know, and maybe this could be a first question for you. How did Fightworks start? Because who was the owner? Was it Matt Powell first?
Yeah, it was Tony Waldecker and Matt Powell had 50-50 ownership, and after we kind of lost, and I had gotten my blue belt at that point, so that was I got my blue belt in January of 2003, which was right when Scott Devine got his black belt. So soon after that, we wound up losing our lease, and I remember having this discussion with Matt, and Matt said, well, we're just going to wait until this other one gets built out in Leesburg. And I just said, we're going to lose everybody. We can't wait that long because, who knows when this next World Gym is going to get built. Maybe it's now, maybe it's 6 months from now, but, we have guys who want to train now. And so I said, we have to get our own place. And he said, well, we really can't because, we don't have the finances. And I said, well, that's crazy. We have 20 guys or whatever. So, we should be able to. He says, well, most of them were, behind on their payments and all that stuff. And I said, well, so I just asked a few questions, and he goes, I don't really know some of those answers. And I'm like, well, how can you not? And so anyway, he goes, well, because I'm busy doing some other stuff. And so anyway, we wound up talking. And so he just calls me up the next day, and he goes, you're right. I thought about it. I prayed on it a lot. And he goes, I just don't have the time to really run it properly. So you take my portion of the gym. So he just gave me half of the academy. He just said, I'll give you half.
Okay.
Tony can help with the instruction. And he goes, you run the books. And
Nice.
so that's how I got involved. And so we wound up getting a location, and I signed the lease and put the initial money up. But then everything worked out fine. We had plenty of people who came and joined, and that was we were at that location really until the place that we rented in 2003 in Sterling. I think we were there until maybe 2012.
Yes. So I was there from the beginning so I started at the gym, right? And then
Right.
the whole thing just stopped one day. There was no class. And I remember you guys were going to train at One Spirit, maybe
Mm-hmm.
in between, right? And then one
Right.
day I think
Yeah.
I got a call from you saying, "Hey, we just opened Fightworks again. It's gonna be here in Sterling in the
Right.
like a warehouse in
Right.
Sterling."
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah. We
how.
just needed a place for mats.
Yes.
As long as we could, we wouldn't freeze our butt off in the winter, and we could put mats down. The rest we'd figure it out.
And Fireworks was maybe at that time the one of the first schools. If I remember correctly, it was Fireworks. Tony Passos was still teaching his school,
I don't
and
know that. Yeah, I know that One Spirit was around, and I know Lloyd had his place up in Maryland, but there wasn't a ton of others around at the time. The fascinating thing is when I look back, we had a lot of guys that wound up going on to black belt, yourself included.
yes,
But out of that core group of 15 or 20 guys, I want to say maybe 7 or 8 of them wound up going on to black belt. It was a
yes,
fair number, of guys who really kept training hard. And I remember, coming up, I just got my butt whipped by guys so many times. And
I
we
mean,
were, it was competitive. Guys would really come after you. Like when you showed up, it was like you better bring your A game, because
oh yeah,
guys are gonna,
it
pull your head
wasn't
off.
it wasn't keep it playful those
It,
days.
it was not a keep it playful kind of academy. It really wasn't. So
Man, yes, good. Everybody I talked to from those days, we all have fond memories of training at
yeah,
Fireworks. You
yeah.
know,
We all got our butts whipped.
we all. I mean, it's the nature of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I remember then when I was watching the Ultimate Fighter, the first Ultimate Fighter, and then on my TV pops Fireworks.
Yeah. When we did the
The
ads. Yeah.
ad on TV, right? And
Yep.
then I remember what? Well, first of all, I wasn't aware of the ad, and it was gonna pop up on the Ultimate Fighter,
Right.
but was the first Ultimate Fighter on this Sky, no, on forgot the channel, the network. But I remember the next week we had a lot of new students,
A lot of new people. Yeah. No,
lot of new
it
people.
it was it was great when it came out. I didn't. When you were training, when you first started, like, did you know that was the thing that you were going to do? Like, you were like, hey, I'm going to be a jiu-jitsu guy, and this thing's
No
going to happen.
way, no way, no.
I don't think I was either. I had wrestled for a long time, and I was actually taking another martial art called Hapkido, a Korean style, which I liked
Mm-hmm.
and enjoyed that. But I always liked something with even more direct contact with my opponent. And I used to just have such bad results when I went in as a white belt. I can just remember every time I went in there, I just got destroyed.
Competition, you mean, or your competition matches,
No,
or just sparring?
just rolling with the other guys, sparring and stuff like that. I'm like, because I think the vibe in the school was different then. It was as tough as Fightworks was coming up when I was coming up through the ranks. I always felt like we had really good camaraderie. Like you
Yes,
got your butt whipped, but it was by one of your buds. It was like, hey man,
exactly.
you can't let me get that arm drag, or you can't let me get that, whatever, because if you do that, I'm going to try to choke you every time. But in the very early days when I was just kind of going there and had maybe only been there, less than a year, less than 9 months, less than 6 months, I felt like the vibe was a little different. It was a little rougher and not as friendly. And I just remember going, I don't know that I even like this that much. The only reason I'm coming is because I feel like I should be here. Like I need to learn this information. And that's what made me continue to come. I think for maybe the first 4 or 5 months, I really didn't like it at all. I used to dread going to class.
So you didn't not like it. You did not like. I guess you say.
I really didn't. Mm-mm.
All right.
No, I was on I'm like, hey, I need to learn how to defend myself. I need to learn these techniques. So even though I don't like it, I'm going to still come. Because I need to learn this information. That overrode my negative feelings about going there.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's kind of the same to me. The I guess the feeling of not knowing get me to come back, because I cannot accept being dominated like I was being.
Right.
Right. So I need to learn these tricks, and I had to go back and get better. I remember about your style of your jiu-jitsu. Even though you had a wrestling background, I remember you having a good half guard, a very good half guard. I think you even I saw you in like 2-3 competitions, and I remember you kind of pulling half guard, which I don't think was usual at the time. No. Maybe it was a new thing. And then you will sweep from there. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I think.
Was that the strategy almost?
I remember having the conversation with Relson where I go, Relson, what do you do when XYZ happens? And he goes, well, you just put them in your guard. And I'm like, Relson, if the guys I'm 5'8", so if the guy weighs like anything over 200 pounds, I probably can't even get my feet to touch around his back. So, what do I do? And he's like, oh, well, you might have to go in a half guard, or whatever. And I remember I did a private with him one time, and he showed me, a lot of things in half guard. And I just remember, my brain being like, man, I didn't know any of this stuff, And that was probably, I remember having that lesson with him when I was a purple. But by that time, I had already really decided that I had to do a lot of half guard stuff, because a lot of the guys I was rolling with were just too big, and I couldn't even get my feet to touch around their back. So, and I didn't like, I wasn't like a spider guard guy or a butterfly guard guy or whatever. It was just kind of seemed like the obvious answer. But yeah, I always liked it. And I have, as many of my students now will remark, I have little feet, and so they make fun of my feet, and little feet are great for sweeping somebody, because you can get your feet in front of their legs and shins and lift and create leverage that way.
Nice. Yes. Dan, what would you think? One thing I remember about you, that you said this one time, is like, I want to compete at every level, every belt, and you've done that. You competed as a blue, as a purple, as a brown, and as a black belt.
Mm-hmm.
How important for you is competition, and what would you think is the competition that you feel the most proud?
Lost your audio there. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Yes, I'm asking you about your competition.
Let's see here.
Which competition do you feel you are the most proud about? You listen? Can you listen to me? Hello?
No, I've lost audio.
No audio? Let me check something. Maybe if I disconnect this. Can you listen to me? No?
Can't hear.
Can't hear? Let me adjust this thing. Hello? Hello? No audio?
Nada.
Okay. What about now?
Oh, I got you now.
Got you? Okay. I'm asking you of your competition career, which do you feel the most proud about? Because you have competed in every belt, and maybe before you tell us which was your best competition, how do you feel competition helps jiu-jitsu, and why would you decide to be competing, to be a competitor?
Man, that's a good question. There's a lot of stuff in there. I wanted to compete as a white belt because I hadn't really competed in a long time, so that was important to me to just kind of get out there and get those competitive juices flowing. I've had a number of people tell me that I'm very competitive as a person. I don't know that I believe that, but I do like to compete some. I do, I'm not a crazy competitor, but usually when I get into something and I like something, I like to compete at it on some level, in some way, on some kind of basis. Blue, I started pushing a little harder, and I got it in my head that I wanted that as a blue belt, I wanted to just go through a tournament and just kind of go through the bracket and kind of, feel like I felt like I was going to be ready for purple when I just went through some tournaments and just went right through the bracket and didn't have trouble with anybody. Purple belt, first couple of tournaments, I kind of got my butt whipped, and to my credit, a couple of them I really just wasn't prepared. The old Fightworks team was always very good about going, kind of saying, hey, just go. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about your training. Don't worry about it. You're in the best shape. Just go. Just go. And a couple of times I really just wasn't ready, but my buds were like, "We're going. You just need to go and just shut up."
Right.
So, it was important for me to feel like I was keeping the metal sharp and keeping the blade sharp, and probably my best results were as a brown, where I competed in the nationals and the masters and seniors, worlds in no-gi. And then I did a little competing at black belt, but not a ton. I don't think I really, I think I was 31 when I started jiu-jitsu. So, as a brown, many years later, I think I was 40. So, it wasn't super high on my list really that much anymore. But I think it's good for everybody to compete some. And I think that was kind of how I competed. It wasn't like my mission in life to win one of the big competitions, but I felt like it was important to compete because it really tests your fight or flight, thought process.
Dan, speaking of competition, would you tell us about how Copa Nova came about? Copa Nova became, I would say, the main competition event in Northern Virginia.
Yeah.
And you were the organizer, right? You were the owner of Copa Nova.
Yeah, I wasn't planning on doing it. It was a friend of mine named Scott Howard asked me, he ran an MMA event and asked me to do a jiu-jitsu tournament associated with it because the person that he was wanting to do it with wound up not being able to do it. So he kind of said, "Hey, do you want to do it?" It was like a last minute thing, and I did. And after that, I just kind of went, okay, it worked out okay. Let's do it a little better next time. And so, for gosh, I don't know, probably I don't think quite 10 years, but probably close to 10 years. We ran the tournament and did well. And
so Scott was organizing an MMA event.
Yes.
And he wanted to have like a jiu-jitsu before the MMA or something
Correct.
like that.
Yeah, like a tournament during the day and then like some MMA fights and stuff that night.
The night, yes. I remember because I competed the very first Copa Nova, the very first editions of Copa Nova. I remember seeing the cage there.
Yeah, we didn't have mats. We didn't have
exactly.
We didn't have anything, and a lot of the tournaments are way better than what we were doing. Everything's automated now, and the mats are lighter.
Now, yes, but at that time,
all that stuff. But it worked out well. We always had pretty good refs and tried to keep things pretty organized. And as a competitor, I can remember plenty of times competing in Relson's events. Where you just waited around for hours.
Oh no! I remember one time at the Arnold's.
Yes.
My only Arnold's. I think my match was at 10 or 11 p.m.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy.
Man.
Yeah. I remember one time they called me and they're like, "Hey, purple belts are next, so why don't you go ahead and start getting your warm up going, and that was like 1:00 or something, and I was like, okay, cool. And I think they actually called me for my match. I think it was 4:30.
Wow.
So it's like 4 hours.
4 hours waiting, and the wait kills you, man.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to wait.
Yeah, your adrenaline's already,
done.
You're like, should I eat? Do I have time to go pee?
Oh yeah.
All that stuff. I gotta go pee again.
Yep.
Yeah, it was horrible. So we were always, for me as the organizer, I always I wanted the day to flow, and I would get stressed if I saw mats that didn't have matches going on them. So, so if I looked at the mats and I saw 2 or 3 mats that didn't have, a ref on there calling somebody on, I'm like, hey, what's the holdup? Let's get it going. So it was always nice when we had things kind of, everything was wrapped up and people were kind of done by, 6 o'clock or 6:30, 7 o'clock, something like that. If it was past 7, I didn't like that.
Right. But Copa Nova became huge. It became the main event for at least Northern Virginia because we had people coming from Maryland, Richmond, D.C., Pennsylvania.
Yeah, we had people from Philly. We had people from all different places. I don't know how many world champions we had compete at the Copa. I mean, some of the biggest names in jiu-jitsu on the international scene now were people who competed.
They competed on the Copa Nova.
The Copa.
Can you name some of them?
DJ Jackson, Keenan Cornelius. Keenan competed
as a purple belt?
He competed, I think, as a purple. I know as a purple, as a brown. I'm pretty sure as a brown. But we had a bunch of different people who wound up, doing well at Worlds and ultimately winning, world championships at various divisions.
So Keenan will come as part of what's his name in Maryland?
He was part of Lloyd's team.
Team Lloyd Irving. Team Lloyd Irving.
Yeah, he was part of Lloyd's team then, and Lloyd would always bring a pretty big crew.
He will always be there with a team.
Lloyd would generally bring a big crew. Fernando Yamasaki would always bring a big crew.
Very, very, very big group. Kids, a lot of kids.
Yeah, a lot of kids, and Capital Jiu-Jitsu, Jeremy. Those guys would always bring a good team. So you could always be be pretty sure that, between Lloyd, Yamasaki, Capital, and a few of the other teams around, we would have a pretty good show.
A good event. Oh
yeah,
man.
I'll tell you something else that as a tournament organizer, it always meant a ton to me, and I owe those guys a lot of thank you, because when you're putting on a tournament like that, you have capital at risk, because you're paying investing. The venue, you have a lot of money, kind of sitting out there, and there's a break-even point in terms of a number of competitors. However many competitors come,
right?
That's whether or not you covered your costs. And I can remember many times when, I wasn't sure about, the numbers and how everything was going to shake out. And, Fernando would call, or Jeremy or one of the guys from the teams would call and go, "Hey, just so you know, we're bringing a big team tomorrow, and, we're sorry we didn't get signed up, online ahead of time, but we're going to have, plenty of people there tomorrow." And that was always just a gigantic relief, because you're like, So, and so I owe a big debt of gratitude to those guys, because they would always support and always bring the team. And that was, I can't tell you how many times I'm like, the night before the tournament, I was sweating.
Oh man. Yeah.
So it
sometimes
was great when they supported and
competitors don't realize what goes behind the scenes to make it happen, right? To make a tournament happen.
Yeah, and I'm glad it was great doing that tournament. Doing that tournament allowed me to do a lot of things, but one of the biggest things is I got to know a tremendous number of competitors in the area, and a lot of the academy owners, and it was great because anytime I called somebody or whatever, they kind of knew who I was. The other part of that was from the Fightworks Podcast.
Whoa, the Fightworks Podcast.
Yeah.
Man, people might not remember. But before...
I still have people. Yeah.
Okay.
To this day.
Oh, man. So, the Fightworks Podcast, let's talk about it. Before we talk about the podcast, what was the name of the referee, the head of the referees? Andrew Correa. He was also very good. I think he will bring a nice vibe to the Copa Nova tournaments.
Andrew was big. He played a gigantic role in the Copa because he knew a lot of other referees. And the referee group is almost like a group to themselves.
Gotcha.
And you can't just have any. Your tournament can go badly in a hurry if you have bad refs who make bad calls. And so Andrew was always very good about, hey, I know somebody who's got tons of experience, and the guy's a black belt, and he's already reffed 60 tournaments, and he always knew people, and he could get them in,
and he himself was a referee on IBJJF tournaments.
Andrew had a ton of experience in between, local tournaments, national tournaments for like, Grappler's Quest or whatever the case may be. He's done Abu Dhabi's, he's done IBJJ. You're going to have a hard time finding somebody who had more experience than Andrew.
Amazing guy. Well, the Fightworks Podcast. Before everything, there was the Fightworks Podcast. People,
it was early.
It was the first thing. I didn't even know what a podcast was when I started listening the Fightworks Podcast.
I don't think I did either.
So tell us, how did this happen? And for the guys who are watching right now, I'm talking to Professor Dan Wallen. He's my jiu-jitsu instructor. I learned under him at the Fightworks Academy, and he's telling us stories about his journey, about being the organizer of Copa Nova, and also right now he's going to tell us about the Fightworks Podcast, which was huge also at a time. So why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
That was an early one. I can't take any credit for the Fightworks Podcast. That was probably the thing that got me a little more interested in jiu-jitsu. I told you when I first started training, I for the first, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months, I'm not even sure I liked it that much.
Okay.
And I walked into and one of the guys that trained at the academy was there. His name was Caleb. And so I walked in and I was like, hey, and he goes, hey, what's up? He's like, why don't you, sit down and have a beer? So, we started chit chatting and just kind of hit it off and became friends and are great friends to this day. And, so anyway, we wound up, chatting and becoming buds, and that was probably maybe June or something of 2002. But towards the end of the year, I remember I had some time off, and I said, hey, I said to him, I knew he'd done some international travel, but I said, hey man, I'm thinking about maybe doing like a trip down to Brazil to do some training. Would you be up for it? And he goes, maybe, I don't know. I might be up. So anyway, we wound up doing that trip together. And
yes.
And he's great with language. So
you went to Brazil with Caleb?
Yeah. I probably trained maybe. Trained maybe 8 months or something at that time.
This was before, because you went again with Relson.
Yeah, I've gone to Brazil, I think 3 times now.
Okay.
So usually go for a couple weeks at a time, but the first one was with Caleb, and it was great. So we, got to train at Hoyler's Academy, Hoyler and Holker in Humaitá. And after I came back from that trip, I knew that it was jiu-jitsu was a different thing for me then.
Oh, I see. What was the difference? What changed your mind about jiu-jitsu?
Sometimes you have those moments in your life where you just kind of have an experience and you kind of realize it's a game changer. It's a sea change kind of moment.
Did you get to train with Hoyler?
Hoyler wasn't there. Holker was there, but the whole experience was just awesome because you get to experience the culture of Brazil and the food and the people and the vibe. And I always feel like when I'm training with somebody who did their training in Brazil, I always feel like they have a little different feel on the mats. Mm-hmm. Like when I'm rolling with them, I feel like they feel a little different from someone who's an American. I'm not sure why. I don't know that I have anything I can kind of put my finger on that describes exactly why I think that way, but just everything, when I came back, I'm like, wow, what an amazing trip. You kind of went to the Mecca, the source.
Right. The source. Was that the time where Steve-O went to my tattoo? Were you there, or shortly after?
I don't know if that was the first time or the second time. I kind of forget. It was one of them.
Steve-O went to Humaitá and rolled with Leticia Ribeiro, I think.
We walked in. It was him and Chris Pontius. Yeah, we walked in on him, and Chris was sitting there having a sandwich. And he looked up at us, and he's like, "What are you guys doing here?" And we're like, "We're here to train." He's like, "You guys are like the only Americans here, other than us and the film crew."
That was awesome. Dan, you were saying, so you say after the trip with Caleb to Brazil, that's when the idea of the podcast came about, or?
Yeah, it was his idea. Totally his idea. I was just a peon that got to tag along to his his brilliance.
Right. That was a great idea. I mean, how he saw jiu-jitsu and then a podcast as a way to like interview everybody and get to know everybody.
we interviewed everybody.
You guys interview, man. At one point, can you say how many downloads the Fightworks podcast had?
I don't know. You know, the tracking of that sort of thing is so much better now. I can remember we did. We always had a pretty decent following because we were able to get press passes to different events and you know, kind of the beauty of training in the jiu-jitsu world, which is very different from some of the other sport worlds, is, you know, you have the ability for, you know, to train with the absolute best people in the world. You could be super wealthy. So, like, for example, you can go out and you could go and train with Marcelo Garcia or Braulio Estima or, you know, Andre Galvão, you know, any of these, Daniel Moraes, you know, all these amazing people who are multi-time world champions. You could have a ton of money, and there is no way you're going to get a lesson with Roger Federer or with Phil Mickelson. You're just not.
I know. Where's Michael Jordan or.
You're not. It's not going to happen. But you could go and you could get, you know, a lesson with, you know,
nice
any of the top jiu-jitsu guys. And the awesome thing about it is not only will you be able to do that, but whoever it is you're training with will probably be one of the nicest people you've ever met.
Man, that's always happens. Jiu-jitsu guys are always the nicest guys, man. There is like, it's rare to see. Nice. To see a guy with a big ego in the jiu-jitsu. And do you think it's because, you know, at any moment somebody can come and just kick your ass?
Yeah, I think also that, and just the culture of jiu-jitsu in general, which is, you know, you're you know, the goal is to share the knowledge that you've been given. You know, you're not the person who invented, you know, all of these things. Even if you're brilliant and you invented a number of moves or some moves or, you know, variations of the move, 99% of the information came to you from someone else, some other source.
Oh yeah.
And so that's why I always tell many of my students, I'm like, hey, it's you know, it's not Dan Wallen Jiu-Jitsu, because I'm not the person who invented it all.
Right.
Maybe I came up with a couple of little things, you know, here and there, little habits that I like that probably somebody was doing 300 years ago, but you know, it's not on a DVD yet. So,
right.
I made this up. Yeah, probably not. I just kind of view it like it, you know, and I think a lot of other people are the same, that they like passing the information on, and they like that. Exactly. They enjoy it, and they're super nice.
Speaking of champions that you met, but I remember you had also invite them as guests for seminars at Fightworks. When you were mentioning Braulio Estima, he was there. Daniel Moraes came.
Yeah.
Galvão came, and Breno. I remember Breno. Breno Sivac. Yeah. Which later he was at one of the shows, right? Breno was, remember this show? Fight Quest.
Yes.
Nice character, Breno. I remember him.
Yeah. Breno's the best. You know, of all the seminars that we've had at the old Fightworks and the new Fightworks, the one of the ones that people talk about the most is Breno. So, you know, and you know, Breno isn't one of these guys that's, you know, a 14-time world champion. You know, he's got a ton of experience, and he's trained with a ton of people, and has been training a long time, and has been teaching a long time. And sometimes I think we look at people and you know, sort of judge them by how many world championships they've won. But, you know, there are a lot of people that weren't gigantic competitors whose database of knowledge is gigantic.
I see.
And he's one of those guys, especially when he starts talking about some of the subtleties of different techniques. And, it's somebody who has a little different aspect or a little different angle can really make a big difference in your understanding.
Oh, 100%. Dan, we were talking about the Fightworks Podcast. What do you remember? You know what I remember the Fightworks Podcast? There was this big controversy. I don't know if you want to talk about it.
Of course. I think
how did the whole thing happen?
I think that's what really put us on the map big time. Was we were having a conversation, and I don't know if it was with
Relson
or Relson.
I think Relson was the first one,
or maybe Relson at first, and I guess there was the controversy about doing online instruction.
Okay. Was it that, or I think that Relson said something about through Gracie Jiu-Jitsu? Well,
right.
You remember better.
Yeah. I think it had to do with online instruction and online testing or something along those lines. And Relson said something, and then Relson and Henner, I think, had some information, had their thoughts about it, and then somehow that went to Renzo.
Yes.
And I can remember Renzo had a response, and somehow it got to where it was a little, oh, he said that, he didn't say that, there's no way, and then he says that, then this is going to happen, and then, it all just kind of blew up into this big thing, and Caleb and I were as surprised as anybody.
Yes, I remember, because you guys were like, this week we're going to have the response of Renzo. And next week we're going to have the response of Henner. And everybody was tuning in to see what was...
Our downloads just went... I think one point we tracked how many countries we were, where this thing was being downloaded. And it was a crazy number. I remember Caleb and I looking at each other like, what in the world
are we doing?
What is... Yeah. So...
What?
But I think one of the best things about it, though, was kind of like what I was saying about the Copa, is I could go up to anybody at the time, less now, I think, but I could go up to anybody at the Worlds or, Pans or Abu Dhabi's or whatever, and I could go, hey, I'm Dan from the Fightworks Podcast.
Oh, okay.
And they'd go, oh, yeah. And I go, hey, do you have a few minutes to chat? And they'd be like, oh, yeah, for sure. And at the time, we were so popular that they knew who I was. Less so now because we're kind of old news.
Right.
And,
I don't think the new school knows. But
no,
if they say Fightworks Podcast, they are old school probably.
Yeah.
They remember the Fightworks Podcast.
But it was great because we met so many people, and so many of those absolute gallant champions were super, super nice. Super nice. I don't know how many people I talked to who were the absolute killers of the sport, 5, 6, 7-time world champions, gi, no gi, just amazing, amazing people. And, hey, do you have a couple of minutes to chat? Oh, yeah, come on over here, my brother, no problem. And sometimes the perception that people have of them from other interviews and so forth, perception of them chatting off mic or whatever is sometimes different.
Yeah.
And, like, for example, Gabby Garcia, some people like her, some people don't like her, whatever. She is so nice.
Oh, really?
I interviewed her, 2-3 different times. She's super nice. She was always super nice. Like,
nice.
Could not be any nicer.
Yes. 100%. For sure.
Who else?
Who else do you remember?
Chanchi, Saulo, Cobrinha, all of them.
Chandy Ribeiro.
Yeah. Shanch was always extremely nice. Saulo I knew a little bit from training in Humaitá. I ran into him a few times when I was down in Brazil. But Cobrinha, super nice. Just, when you see all these people, it's no surprise that jiu-jitsu is kind of taking over the world because you have so many people who are just amazing ambassadors of the
Oh,
sport.
100%. Man, I miss those competitors. It looks like jiu-jitsu back in the day. I don't know if you agree with me. There were finishers, and there was. I like watching jiu-jitsu more when there was these big stars. They were all going after the submission, and it was just nice. Even takedowns. Nowadays, competitors just pull guard and play a jiu-jitsu that is not. I don't think it's aesthetically good to watch. Right? I don't know if you. What is your take on old school jiu-jitsu and the newer styles of competition?
I don't think it's as fun when everybody tries to pull guard. It was important, coming from a wrestling background as a white belt and as a blue belt, I was always trying to take people down myself. Mm-hmm. As a purple belt, I was so focused on making sure I wasn't like the Mr. Top Game wrestler doesn't have a bottom game. So as a purple, I tried to just pull guard on everybody because I wanted to work my bottom game more. Once I felt like my bottom game was as good as a brown and going forward, I was like, okay, I'm going to take people down again. Mm-hmm. And I always tell my students, I'm like, hey, listen, you really need to know how to take people down because, if you're on the bottom in a real fight, it's not where you want to be.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think I emphasize standing a lot too. And also it's part of the self-defense, so they need to have an idea of standing up. What happened with Caleb? Have you talked to him? And how did the Fightworks Podcast start weighing off?
It was always kind of his baby. He did all the editing. He did all the stuff. As I said before, I was just happy to kind of tag along with what was a brilliant idea and an early idea on his part. So that's kind of the good thing about one of the great things about me. I don't have many great ideas, but sometimes I'm around other people who do have good ideas, and I get pulled into them. So that always works out well. Caleb's a black belt. He got his black belt under Fabio Santos.
Oh yeah, he moved to San Diego, right? He was in San Diego.
Mm-hmm. He was in, another big jiu-jitsu town. So, I think when he left Virginia, I think he was a purple, and then wound up going to brown and black under Fabio some years ago. So, and he lives in Texas now. So, but that was always kind of his thing. So when he wanted to stop it and not do it anymore, then I was cut out again.
I see. He got busy and maybe move on to other things. It's crazy because nowadays you see podcasts everywhere, right?
They're huge now. Yeah,
they're huge now. When he and you both guys started doing it, there was no podcast. You guys were the pioneers of podcasting jiu-jitsu.
It was early.
Mr. Dan, so eventually Fightworks also came to an end here in Virginia.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, 2012.
What motivated you? What was the stage in your life where you decided to move to Greenville?
My wife and I decided that we wanted to move out of the big city, so no longer be in the northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. area, and we wanted to go someplace south that was warmer and just not quite as a big a town. So we wound up in Greenville, South Carolina, and so I started another academy by the name of Fightworks here, and so that started, and once the it's going great guns right up until the coronavirus nonsense started. So we've been off the mats for a little while, but we're hoping things clear up sometime soon.
Yes, I've seen the pictures. The school looks awesome, and you're doing a great job there. And you're an entrepreneur overall, Dan. You're doing other things too besides the jiu-jitsu school.
Yeah, I started I got involved with the dog training business, and that's really what I do now. I had some great German Shepherds that played a big role in my life a number of years ago, and training them was something that I liked, and spending time with them and working with them was something that I really liked, and I found myself doing it more and more. And eventually, I was a financial advisor. Eventually, sold my practice, and just I remember, how we were talking about kind of a sea change moment. I had a group locally. There's a group in the middle part of South Carolina, Columbia. They wanted to buy my practice and have me run their office. And I said, "What time do I have to come in the morning?" And they said, "Oh, well, 8:30." And I said, "Well, I could do 10:30." And they go, "Well, we can't really do 10:30. What are you doing in the morning?" And I said, "Well, I walk my dogs."
What kind of excuse is this, right? For them, they will be like...
I'm sure they were wondering if I was really being serious,
And
But,
you were.
I was very serious. Yeah, no, I really liked getting up in the morning and, walking a mile or 2 miles or whatever it was, with my two dogs. Mm-hmm. And just decided that I didn't want to give that time up. And I liked spending it with them, and I it was an enjoyable part of my day. Mm-hmm. And I was dead serious when I just said, "Hey, I'm not going to compromise that time. I don't need your money, and I'm not 18 anymore." And mm-hmm. So now when I look back on that decision, as time went on, I wound up just kind of getting out of the business altogether and getting into the dog training business instead.
Oh, wow. That's super cool.
So, and that's kind of how it all started, but I owe it to those two German Shepherds of mine, Maximus and Athena, and they both passed now, so I miss them both, but yes. I think about them a lot.
I saw Max recently. Sorry to hear that, man. I know how much they meant for you. Are you thinking about getting other ones?
A lot of people ask that, but I don't like the idea of, I'm sure at some point, maybe down the road, my wife and I will have dogs again, German Shepherds mm-hmm. again. They're my favorite, but, I don't like the idea of getting replacement dogs. When you get dogs, they deserve their own love, their own attention, mm-hmm. and they shouldn't take the place. And for me, this is just for me. Right. I can't speak for anybody else, but they shouldn't take the place of another dog. They should have their own spot in your life. So when we're ready and the time's right, then that'll happen again. But the other thing that I thought was important to talk about in terms of me is I'm 50. I'll turn 51 in September, and I didn't start jiu-jitsu as a young man, and I have pretty significant arthritis in both of my hips. And at some point, I'm going to need my hips replaced. So right now, a big part of my training, I have certain limitations, and so it's fascinating because some of the things that requires me to do is I think those are lessons that everybody should think about. The arthritis that I have in my hips didn't come because I did jiu-jitsu.
I was going to ask you that.
There are tons of people. Yeah, I wondered that myself, because I used to like to lift weights and squat and all that stuff. But the research that I've done, there's tons of people who have arthritis in their hips, and some of them were rollerbladers. Some people were, played, skied or biked or ran or whatever. I think there's a genetic component to it. Mm-hmm. So I could have been an ice hockey guy and maybe it happened. Mm-hmm. Just the same. But
you have a recommendation for training jiu-jitsu for a student who starts like later, let's say in their 30s or 40s?
Yeah, or even somebody who starts young. And Hiron talks about this. I've never trained with Henner, but I've trained with Hiron a few times, and I really like Hiron and some of the things.
He came to Fightworks one time. I remember.
Yes, yeah, and he's one of the people that always responds to text messages that I send and things like that. And but it struck me again recently. When you're training hard and you're like, I'm gonna smash and I'm gonna bring the A game to somebody today, and when you've been doing that for a period of years, there's a toll that you pay. And it's like some of these guys who are MMA fighters. I was looking at Don Fry. I was watching him give his acceptance speech into fame.
Okay.
And when he's like 51 or 52, so he's not much older than I am.
Yeah.
When he was walking out onto the stage, he's like barely walking.
Oh man.
He's limping, and you just kind of go, hey, this guy was a hammer for a certain period of time, but man, when you push it that hard, you're going to pay for that later. The concept that Hiron was talking about, where he's like, hey, listen, you want to think about your training about longevity and, how hard do you want to train? Are the really hard roles that you're having is that you have day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out, is that worth a limited range of motion later in your life?
I see.
And so I still like to train, but I do it a little differently. And, I haven't had the surgeries on my hips yet. That'll come. But I train a little differently at 50. I spend more time warming up, more time cooling down, more stretching, doing all of these things.
Yeah, man.
But I think it's good for people to think about that. That you don't always have to, train as hard as you can every time.
Not every role is like a war.
That's right.
Right. Then I have a couple of people here that you might remember that they say hi. One of them is Tanner Harvey.
Oh yeah.
You say hi, Dan.
Mr. Tanner.
Mr. Tanner. So Mr. Tanner started training with me now.
Yes. Yeah, well, I'm glad to see he got back in it. I always thought he was talented and was disappointed when he stopped.
Do you remember he triangled a giant at Copa Nova? I don't know if you...
Yeah. No, he always had a great triangle.
Very triangle, very flexible. Well, he's back in Jiu-Jitsu and he did a couple of competitions, did really good.
Yeah, no, I've been chatting with him on Facebook a little bit.
Nice. And then we have Eric Olson. How did this? He said, you are definitely not 18 anymore.
No, that's true. And he would know. He would know. He's another guy that I just kind of introduced him to it, and then
that happens, right? You start talking to people, and one of them of 20, 30 people you talk, they eventually say, okay, let me see what your jiu-jitsu is.
Fine.
How was with Eric?
If I could just get Dan to shut up, then maybe he'll quit bugging me to train. Right. So I'll just show up and train once and see how that goes.
Eric trained until he's got his black belt too.
I know. He's another one of these guys that,
How do you bring him in? Do you remember, Eric?
He was studying another martial art, and but he was doing it at Fightworks. There was a lot of, we had this academy and the mats and all this nice space, and so there were some other people that would come in and use the space occasionally, and I knew him prior to him training jiu-jitsu. I knew him from a mutual friend. And so he came in one time, and I just said, hey, man, check this out. You ought to see if you like this.
Nice. Great guy.
Check out this choke, or check out this move here. Tell me what you think. And he was like, man, that's kind of cool. And then, as they say, the game was afoot.
You say, I'm so grateful for being conned into jiu-jitsu.
Exactly. Oh, well, it's one of those things. It's like when somebody slides you a really good dessert or something, you're like, man, that was good. I might have to order that again.
Then I have maybe students here. I was Hornswoggle, he said, Eric. What do you know, I have students at the Basix. They know
Sure.
me as the instructor, Marco. But you know me as Marco, the white belt, right?
Yeah.
The guy who's getting beat up in tournaments. Any stories that you can tell them? What do you remember about us training?
I can remember one time doing a tournament as a purple belt, and I think I was the senior belt at the time, and it was kind of like the turning of the tide in my purple belt career. I'd gotten my butt whipped at like the last 2 or 3 purple belt tournaments, and I think when I first turned purple, I was kind of nervous about it, and then I got my butt whipped a few times, and I'm like, all right, look, I'm over it. So here's what's up. I'm going to smash some people at this tournament. And I can remember you were at that same tournament, and you go, hey, I think you're going to go next. And I was like, okay, I think you said, hey, you're going to go first, and everybody's going to be watching you. And I can remember going, okay, but I was so pissed off, about doing so badly at the last few tournaments. I'm like, look, I'm just going to smash anybody who gets on the mat with me. And I can remember I called you over, and I was like, hey, Marco, do you have any deodorant? I think I forgot my deodorant. I stink. And you go, yeah, here you go. And I remember you gave me deodorant. I was like, oh my God, thanks. Thank you so much for that. And I think at the time you had competed a few times and hadn't done well.
Oh, I'm terrible in competitions, man.
Yeah, hadn't done well. And then I think this was like, I forget which tournament this was for. This was probably like your 4th or 5th blue belt tournament or something. And then I remember you beat everybody. It's like you had one tournament where all of a sudden it was like it flipped.
Yeah.
And then you beat everybody, and I was like, it's over for him. He's got it figured out now. He's got competing is so nerve-wracking and so scary in so many ways, because you're like, I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to get smashed. Is my jiu-jitsu any good? People are watching me. My wife's here. My girlfriend's here. Other students are here. The pressure.
There is pressure for sure.
There's all this pressure, and I can remember just like, I remember at that tournament specifically just kind of being like, there is no pressure. I'm going to kill everybody. Whoever, no pressure. I'm like, I can remember, kind of warming up, jumping up and down, and you were like, hey, you're going to be next. I think everybody's going to be watching. I was just like,
no pressure.
Watch this, man. There is no pressure. I've been on the bad end all the. I've been getting beat up by everybody. I'm like, man, I'm done. I'm done with the pressure. Watch this. And I think it was that same tournament that you did this thing. You were just like,
yes,
I'm done.
I'm done.
I'm gonna. Yeah. And then after that, that's why I was like, he's got it figured out now. It's over. The nerves, the not, because when we were training the academy, you were always very tough. And then fighting in the tournaments, I never thought you were up to your potential.
Yes. Yeah.
And then finally, I think it was that tournament where that was it.
Exactly.
The spigot got turned on, and then I think you tapped it. You tapped everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember being there very consistently. I was never a guy who will show up, take 3 months break, come back. I remember being there to a point where I think one day I had something to do and I couldn't go to the training. I think the trainings were my days were Monday, Wednesdays, and maybe a Saturday open mat. And you called me. Hey, everything is okay? Yeah, everything's okay. What? No, because you always come and you weren't here on Wednesday. Right? And I was like, wow, yeah, I'm good. I just couldn't go that day. But I keep that in mind, in my memory about how much you care and how much you were in touch with all of us. That one day of missing a class, you were already calling. That was awesome. That's a good example.
Yeah, it was just kind of a different thing then because, we had like this really core good group, and you knew when you showed up and like those 5 or 6 guys, 7 guys, if they were there, you were going to have some good, hard, tough training.
Who you had a hard time more with? Well, all of them, I guess, but Tony, Matt, Dave.
I remember the first time I rolled with Tony, he just destroyed me so fast and easily, and I can remember being like,
it was never pleasant with him.
What? Yeah, what in the world? Like that's just not right. Like that was just fast and easy for him. But there were a few guys that I would train with that really used to kind of make a point to come after me. And I'm not like that. I'm not one of these people. I don't react well when someone kind of, like
puts a target,
points me out, and they're like, "You, man, I'm coming for you today. I hope you're ready, because man, I'm going to smash you. Did you get your sleep last night? Because you're going to need it."
I see. I don't like that either.
Dave Patton used to get on me, and Matt Omborg used to smash me, and it was a really I liked rolling with. Didn't like rolling with Matt because Matt was a little bigger than I was, and he had a wrestling background, so he had great control and trained some judo as well. Did a lot of judo training.
Yep.
So he always had a very good base, and was very heavy, and was strong and smart. Yeah. So, and at the time, especially when I was a purple and as well as brown, but I can remember during our purple belt days, because his rank was almost identical to mine, I was really trying to work my bottom game. And he really did not care about what I was working on or not. He was going to smash and pass and tap. And so I remember a lot of times going, okay, I cannot let him pass. Just you have to just not let that happen. So whatever you need to do, whatever it is you need to figure out. And at the time, I don't know that I liked it very much. I don't think I did, but it was great for me because I really had to solve some problems.
Yeah, for sure. Every time somebody smash you, there is an opportunity that, man, if he's exposing a weakness, then I need to work on that,
Yeah. No, and he would put the smash on me every chance he got. Patton, on the other hand, Dave Patton, who's also a black belt now. I think Dave's I think Dave's a 3-stripe black belt now. But if the big mistake I made with Dave was if I would let him get his grips. If he would get grips on my pants or whatever, let him get the first grip set up, he'd pass, and then the whole fight would be me trying to get out from under.
Oh, yeah.
And then and the big lesson there was, man, you cannot let him get those grips first.
Yeah, I remember.
On board it was about, hey, frame, space, don't let him put the weight on you, move, keep him off balance, etc. Patton, it was like, I don't care what you have to do. Do not let him get the grips. If he gets the grips,
don't.
It's like starting a boxing match and letting the guy have the first swing at your head. You just can't let that happen.
Yeah, that's so funny.
They exposed big weaknesses in my game, and now you hear people like Marcelo Garcia and some of these other people talking about, hey, hand fighting and its importance, and grips and all that stuff. But
then Relson, I know you have you are very loyal. You consider yourself a Relson. What are the main influence you got from him? What do you learn the most from him?
That's a a great question. People ask me all the time. They go, "Hey, Helson's, pretty busy now. He has more academies, and you don't get to see him as much. Have you ever thought about, training under somebody else, or somebody where you could see him more, and that sort of thing?" And that's there's always that temptation, that the grass is going to be greener, training with somebody else. And I'm sure with some aspects that might be true, but, so much of my background, especially in the early days, everything came from him. A lot of the people that I knew, a lot of the people that I was introduced to, a lot of the people that, were big jiu-jitsu influences in my life, like Phil Cardella, Daniel Moraes, Scott Devine, Garth Spendiff, all of these guys that, were big influences on me, kind of coming up through the ranks. I wouldn't have known any of those people without Relson, Breno, Sivac, because I remember saying to Relson, "Hey, Relson, I'm going to go down to Brazil. Where should I go? With whom should I stay?" All that stuff. That all came from him. He's the root of everything. Yes. So,
did you go to Thailand with Relson?
I did. Yeah, I went to Thailand with him. So,
do you remember any funny story that you can share?
Oh my God, Helson's just the thing about Relson is, I think, and I remember talking to Breno about this one time, and I said, "Hey, you've done plenty of training with Rickson and with Relson and Hoyler," and he goes, "Listen, everybody loves Rickson. Rickson's, they talk about Rickson, almost in a mythical, voice, like Rickson." Mm-hmm. He goes, "Listen, there isn't anything that Rickson knows that Relson doesn't know." He goes, "You're just talking about two different brothers. They have a little different style, little different thoughts, but they have the same information. To this day, I feel like Relson's jiu-jitsu is the best in the world. And of course, I think that way because, he was my first instructor and really is still my instructor. But Relson always loved to have fun, and, going on international trips with him was always just a hoot because, whatever you thought was going to happen is just not what would happen. So, so one time we're on this boat in Thailand and we had been, cruising around on this boat and, we'd done some swimming and some fishing and all these different things. And, and so we're kind of getting hungry and we're like, oh, what should we have? Where are we going to eat? And, we had a friend there named Sean Douglas who, lived in Thailand and Sean was like, well, we could go here, we could do a cookout, we could do all these things. And then right out of the blue, Sean goes, "Oh man, this area right here," he goes, the tide's really strong. He goes, "So in between here and the island over there, there's a super strong current." And so he's like, when we pass this area, the water's amazing, but don't jump out to swim there because the current's just moving much more than what you think. We go by there and Relson's like, "I'm going to swim to the island." And so, and we're probably like 15, we're 50, the boat we were on was pretty big. So it was like a 12 foot, 15 foot, drop from where the water was to where we were standing. Relson's like, dives right off. Just, and it wasn't like, "Hey, I'm thinking about this." No. Right. He just goes, "I'm swimming." Yeah, and right in the area where Sean's like, no, don't swim here.
Don't swim here.
It's gonna it's gonna carry you out to sea. Relson's like, "I'm swimming."
Oh,
so he jumps in, zips across to the island, no problem. Cash, totally cash. Sean's like, he'll never make it to the island. Relson's like, whoosh, right to the island, right? Swims right back to the boat, no problem. We pull him back in. He's like, "Okay, now we can go eat. Let's go eat."
Nice.
He decided he he had to get his workout in, I guess.
Typical Helson, man. Wow.
But he didn't say anything about it to Sean, like, okay, yeah, no, what happens if I jump? He listened to Sean go, don't swim here. And Helson's like, I'm going to swim here.
Oh, man. I agree with you. I'm very considered very fortunate to have seen him and train with him. And I have to say thank you, because I remember you had Helson at your house many times, and you will call me. And you will say, Marco, we're here with Helson. Come hang with us.
You got to come over.
And I was like, oh, okay. And then I was there like in 15 minutes. I was in your house and we're hanging with Helson, talking about his dad and jiu-jitsu. And
those were magic times, because now there's, he has more academies.
Yep.
There's more people that vie for his time. And, that the time that we shared, when that was happening, I don't think too many people get it now, because there's just more demands on his time.
Yes.
And
Oh, man. I'm very thankful when you invite me. We will go eat sushi. We'll have a private with Helson. And then the seminar was at night. And I remember he'll call you boss.
Yeah.
Hey, boss.
But those were, I only called a few people, when I knew that time was coming up, and I only called a couple of people that I knew would really enjoy and appreciate that time, to get to spend that private time with him. And remember back at that time, YouTube didn't exist, and DVDs and,
exactly.
all these things that are online now, they did not exist back then. So when he would show up, he was like the living god of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
yep.
And that's why to this day, his impact and his thoughts and the principles that he would explain, are so huge in my brain in terms of jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm. Same
the
here.
way that I teach, many of the terms that I use, everything from how I tear the tape, when I'm doing a promotion,
right?
All these things, how I do all of that, all came from him.
Yep, for sure.
I can when I'm putting a stripe on somebody's belt, or when I'm putting a black bar on somebody's belt, I can take the tape and I can start rolling the tape around their belt, and I'll just kind of eyeball it and I'll tear it. And then when I line it up with my belt, it'll be exactly the same length.
Yeah.
And I've watched him do that I don't know how many times. He doesn't look at it. He'll just start wrapping the tape, and he'll do it, and he'll go. And then when he sticks it next to somebody else's belt,
it's the exact same.
It is exactly the same length. Mm-hmm. I don't know how he does it, but I've done it a few times, and now for whatever reason, I can just kind of eyeball it and
cool.
and do it. And that just comes from him doing it. So there's no way at this point in my career, after training with him for almost 20 years, there's no way that I could break away and be with somebody else. Man. I don't think I could do it.
Yes. As soon as all this, speaking of the Helson, and Eric is saying, Patton is the gorilla on Bugs Bunny throwing bugs around like a sack of potatoes. And he's saying, I cannot wait to train with you guys again. Man, Dan, when do you think this whole thing, how this gonna end? How are we gonna go back to jiu-jitsu? What are your?
I think there's a lot of pent up demand right now. That's for sure.
Yes, I know you have your strong political views, but I don't know if you wanna. What's your take? What's the plan behind all this? Are they gonna take some liberties or what?
Well, everybody has their ideas about stuff, but it's just conjecture. So it's just conjecture. I mean, I think the important thing is you have to deal with what you can confirm. We know that the coronavirus is out there. It's a real thing, and it definitely really kills people. What percentage of people it kills and all of those things, it's hard to put a finger on all that. I know I don't want to catch it and take my chances. And I don't know anybody who does, but my thoughts are I hope the thing just kind of peters away like many of the other dangerous viruses and so forth. I did a trip to China. Speaking of China, I did a trip to China in 2009. I was invited to go to Beijing as part of an MMA event there called the Art of War, and a couple of friends of mine who listened to the Fightworks podcast, they invited Caleb, but I was the lucky loser. Caleb couldn't go, and Caleb said, "Well, since I can't go, you can go." And so I went out to China for a week.
Nice.
Which was, I met so many jiu-jitsu people. It was one of the trips time, but right then was when they had the swine flu. And I remember getting off the plane and they did the little thermometer on your forehead to see if you had a temperature. But it didn't seem to have the same response as what's going on now. But regardless of the percentage of people who die from it or who catch it, any deaths from something like this is bad. So I think, in the jiu-jitsu community, we're maybe a little bit more aware of cleanliness because we're always washing kimonos and, putting
defense soap.
Cleaning the mats. We're used to things like ringworm or staph or whatever and that sort of thing. So I'm hoping that as things go on, some of the normal things that we do in jiu-jitsu will kind of help us to push past. And, I think anytime you take a break from your normal routine, you should try to use that to make an improvement that maybe you otherwise couldn't. So, maybe learning some different things or, doing some fitness or some techniques or something that maybe you couldn't seem to squeeze into your schedule before. At Fightworks, since everybody's out, I have a crew in there almost every day working on different things we're trying to improve. So we're, painting and redoing floors and, doing all these things to, because before there was always somebody in there training every day, classes every day. So we're using this to rip up some of the old stuff, put new in, and so.
And I think personally too, I feel like I'm taking more time to maybe correct an old habit or change my diet a little bit more, adjust more things like that. I think it's sometimes make the best out of the situation.
Yeah,
so.
I think one of the big takeaways for me is that, and I don't think this is one of the many things that I do that isn't very smart, but I think there's a tendency, for me at least, and probably some other people out there who go, listen, I'm exercising 3, 4, 5 times a week. I can get away with eating XYZ, because I'll just burn it off. I can eat, pizza twice a week or whatever. Well, if you're not exercising quite as much now,
exactly,
maybe it's a good time to clean up the diet a little bit. We have a black belt at our academy who originally got his black belt from the Valence brothers in Florida, and the gentleman's name is Marcel, and he's very strict about the Gracie diet. And I can't even look at a bite of yogurt now without him going, listen, man, that's acid. And you cannot combine yogurt with any other food. So every time I have, eggs or whatever else, and I go, man, some Greek yogurt on top of that would be great, some added protein. I have this little, Marcel pop into my head and go, man, don't do it.
Doesn't
it's acid. does not combine.
Oh man.
So, yeah, so I kind of go, I need to look into that more. I need to look into, the Gracie diet and what things I should be combining. And
I do follow, but I would say the main guidelines. It's not like sometimes I do mix some things, but for the main core, I think I do follow the main guidelines.
I need to just send Marcel pictures of a box of Crispix cereal, which is corn and wheat together. Oh
no!
So I go, hey Marcel, look what I had for breakfast.
Yes.
So, but the interesting thing about Marcel and what I like having about one of the many things that I like having him at the academy is he is a true believer. He is one of these guys who just goes, hey, it is all about jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is all you need. It is the source. It's the thing. It is the way.
Wow. That's very good.
And just believe in the jiu-jitsu and believe in the technique and stay on the Gracie diet. And man,
that's it.
But when you listen to him talk about it, the passion, the belief, it's empowering.
That's awesome, man.
And I love talking to him. And I love training with him. Because there's times when I think certain ways about things, and then I listen to him, and he's like, Dan, here's the thing. And he's just so pure with the belief, and I love that about him. It's just one of the many things about him that I like and respect and admire, and wish I could be more like him in that regard.
Wasn't Relson saying also, I believe, in the banana? That's one of his phrases?
No. I asked him one time, I said, hey, Relson, we were watching TV or something, and I had some religious ad or something. And I said, hey, Relson, did you ever go to church, or, was Christianity or church, or, was that, big in the family? I never hear you guys talk much about the religion. And I said, and I remember this question, I said, what do you believe in? And he goes, I believe in the pisau.
The pisau.
So, from that day, I just remember going, man, if I am nothing, I am nobody. If I do not have a shirt that says, I believe in the pisau.
Oh, man, that was great. Dan, we've been talking for so long, man. It was nice talking to you. How's the family? The girls
are great. Girls are great. So they're the best thing going on in my life.
Nice.
Absolutely.
I see you training with them. I see you training with them on the mats with their geese. That's awesome.
Yeah, we're training a little bit, and I don't push them to train. I talk to them sometimes about why it's important to know techniques and to know how to defend themselves. And so I don't like to talk to them or come at them from the angle of you should be doing this or you need to do that.
That's a common mistake with parents. You should do jiu-jitsu. You should.
Yeah.
You must do it.
Yeah. No, there's already with my 8-year-old, there's been a few little conflicts with other students, and I just say, well, listen, sometimes these things are going to happen and it's not going to stop now. As time goes on, these things can happen more. And so it's important to know how to defend yourself. And, jiu-jitsu is the way, and jiu-jitsu has all the answers to those problems.
Cool.
So, but, I'll tell you the funny thing, Grace, my 5-year-old, she got it in her head last time Relson was coming, and she wouldn't call him Relson. She would just call him the Grand Master. So she'd go, is the Grand Master coming?
Oh,
when
nice.
is the Grand Master coming? So they were so fired up, but I can tell you my heart was ready to burst when, I first saw them training with Relson, and Relson is awesome.
There's a cool picture of your daughter, you and Relson. Right?
That's one of the pictures that I love so much. I'll send you another one of Grace. She was probably 4 at the time, I think. Put an arm bar on Relson, and Relson selling it, with the,
nah.
So, but Grace is she's all smiles, all happy. So
That's super cool, Dan. It's been a
yeah,
pleasure talking with you, man, and to share this interview with this conversation more than an interview with the guys who from the old Fightworks who might be watching and remembering these old times since uh, right now we cannot actually train, but as soon as this reopens, I should come and visit you and then do some jiu-jitsu together.
yeah. Well, I need to bring a few guys up, and kind of show them the old stomping grounds, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't really I don't look back on my jiu-jitsu time and think about it in terms of things that I've achieved. The things that I did were part of my personal growth, but it makes me very happy to know that I influenced some other people, you among them,
Mm-hmm.
who have taken the little tiny bit of influence that I had and just done great things with them. So, the things you've done with your academy and some of the other people that you train with and inspire, and that probably makes me happier than anything that I've achieved on the competition mat. And I think probably at this point in your career, you're the same as well. You love to see the success
Oh
of your
yeah,
students.
oh yeah, 100%, 100%. That's very
Yeah.
rewarding to see them grow and advance and uh, achieve their goals. As that's something that you feel it very. It sounds very proud. You feel very proud of it when you see students getting promoted and going through the ranks. And very thankful for your mentorship, Dan. For you, Tony, David, Matt, and all the great. I have great memories, and it's been a pleasure talking with you. And hopefully, we'll do this again, huh?
Sounds good, buddy. Happy to anytime. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dan. Stay safe, stay healthy, and say hi to the wife and the girls. And hopefully, I'll
Will
come
do,
down
buddy.
visit you.
God bless.
Thank you, man. Take care.